Hi everyone, welcome to Brothers, Sisters, Strangers video podcast. I'm Ali John Chaudhary, psychotherapist, and I'm back here with Fern.
Hi, good to see you again. I'm Fern Schumer Chapman, the author of the upcoming book Brothers, Sisters, Strangers, Sibling Estrangement, and the Road to Reconciliation. And as you know so well, I was estranged from my brother for decades. And somehow in the last 7 years have managed to sustain a relationship with him.
Hmm.
I have reconciled.
That's great, actually. So that's really wonderful that you're able to do that. So so basically, what I wanted to do, Fern, is I wanted for us to get back on our last episode together before we move on to today's subject, which is birth order. Um, So something that's been brought to our attention is, of course, from some of our viewers that do respond to us, and I'm glad that we're getting the response that we have with our videos because this is such a prevalent issue that needs to be talked about. Some viewers have mentioned some issues with regards to our stance with regards to the generalities we brought up with males and females with regards to gender differences. And I just want to mention, of course, that we are sensitive to the notion of gender being on a spectrum. I think it's very important that we mention that. It is a hot button issue. There is biology involved, of course, with this. And of course, we always aim to try to talk most about our audience's experiences. And of course, male and female characteristics can sometimes manifest differently or less so. And of course, we are sensitive to trans or non-binary people also. And perhaps down the road, we may do an episode on this. But I just wanted to mention that that of course these were general characteristics that we were bringing up that needed to be mentioned. And of course, we were talking, as you mentioned, about the patriarchy too, very much, and about the influence of expected gender roles within the patriarchy. So we were, of course, denouncing that and talking about how sometimes it's not exactly that way in reality. So
I'd like to add, too, that I did hear from a lot of trans and non-binary people on my survey. And sadly, many of them say that they were estranged because they simply did not meet the family ideal of what they should be. So estrangement is very common in that particular group. And what we were really talking about, I think, is the cultural basis in Western thinking of the patriarchy and how that defines the ways in which we interact in the family. So I just want to make sure we clarify those 2 points.
of course, and I'm glad that we were able to touch on these hot button issues sometimes. You know, it's good to clarify that, and we want, of course, to be as inclusive as possible. And of course, we may explore this the experiences of trans people perhaps down the road in a future episode. So we'll see.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So today's episode is birth order and sibling estrangement. This is something that seems to be coming up with a lot of people also, noticing how their different role within the family can sometimes be affected because of the birth order and such, and because of their position. And I know that you've had some experiences you wanted to share with that.
Thanks. Yeah, I did because I think it's important to portray the lived experience of estrangement. And I think for me, our estrangement runs very deep. I looked at my brother in a way that was very inappropriate as a child, and I wanted to explain that. I came from a very disturbed and disorganized family. And it's important to see that I had one older brother and no other siblings. So I'm going to say something that sounds really obvious, but I think it's worth my time. And that is that when my brother was born into our family, there was a mother and a father. When I was born into the family, there was a mother, a father, and an older brother. I was the youngest, and I couldn't differentiate who had more ability to help me negotiate the world. They were all older than me, and they all looked like they could help me out. And when you're in a very disorganized family like that, you're looking for security anywhere. And so
Mm.
I placed expectations on my brother, which were very unrealistic. He was not a parent. He was in the same mess I was in. And it took me decades to understand that I couldn't look to him to get the things I needed from parents who were unable to provide that kind of guidance. So I think it's important to recognize that there are all sorts of dynamics. Gender plays into it, but also birth order. And in our case, there were only two of us. And he was older. So like I said, placed a lot of expectation on him.
And what you're saying is very common, as we'll get into very soon here. I think that if you're the younger child, there are certainly some influences that you may be looking for, since they were there when you came into the world. So I think that that's very important, that we explore some of those realities and how that can shape our experiences also. Um, no, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really important that we put words to our experiences like this. I myself am a first child, so I kind of see myself in some of these characteristics as I was putting all this together. So well, let's talk a little bit about this then. I think this is really good. It's a good segue back into into the theory. Now, again, based on the research I've done through scientific journals with this, I think it's important to remember that there's a multiplicity of experiences that shape an individual in terms of the development of their personality and such. So there's biological, social, cultural aspects. There's the physical environment. There's situational experiences that can occur. And in the interest of estrangement, I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus more on the social and the environmental traits that are often represented here. So a good theory that's out there that's talked about this a little bit more is Adler's birth order theory. And this theory takes into consideration the influence of the child's development within their family environment as a shaper of the child's thoughts and actions, and ultimately their personality. So he gave social interactions and community life just as much importance as thoughts and emotions within the individual, which was more of the prevalent discussion at the time that he was there. So it's important to mention that according to this theory, that the child isn't endowed with particular personality traits in their head. Instead, the formative years, the years where they're growing up, play a pivotal role through the interplay of family dynamics and its inherent environment. So, even though certain families are different, barring toxicity and such, a lot of people have similar parent-child and sibling interactions as the family matures and develops. There's actually a framework for that. So, getting into some of the theory for the first child, what he's been saying with regards to that is that a first child will naturally get more attention since they're largely the only child as they're coming in. And their first interaction will usually be with adults. So the people that are older than them will help to increase their level of maturity. That would happen more so than the other children that have siblings. So it's interesting to point that out, because oftentimes we may feel that certain firstborns may be a little bit bossy or controlling, authoritarian. Stubborn is another word that we can sometimes use. But yet there's also healthier expressions, and that's really important. So I kind of wanted to mention that because people can be inherently bossy or authoritarian, they can become more rigid towards their siblings with regards to that. And that's a really important question to look at too, because they want to be seen as the elder in the family, oftentimes as the first child. That doesn't always sit well with other siblings, right? Well, who are you to tell me what to do, So we have that type of power struggle that can occur within families. And what ends up happening is that it can sometimes go into adulthood. And the need to be correct can be another issue that can create a bit of an inflated ego, which can make that they can have difficulty acknowledging the wrongs of the past. And that's when a breakdown in communication can actually occur. So that's the unhealthy expression of that. The healthy expression of somebody that is the firstborn is that they can be natural leaders, they can be reliable, they can be protectors and providers for others. So
You know, I think there's some interesting points that we should make here too, which is the sibling relationship is the longest in a person's life. Parents don't live for the entire lifespan of children. And as a result, some of these relationships can be 80 years long. And there is a lot of waxing and waning that goes on over the course of a lifetime. So there may be years when siblings are closer and then when they're much more distant. And it can depend on the circumstances of what's happening in their lives. So, for example, when a parent becomes ill, they're thrown together again and have to deal with one another for better or worse. So I think it's really important to recognize that relationships are not stagnant or static, and an 80-year relationship is particularly vulnerable and volatile.
yes, I agree. I think that's the thing too, and it's very true. And you have to cultivate that relationship. And as we'll see, there's according to birth position, there's more people that have an easier time cultivating those relationships. It seems that the people that come after seem to have the ability, if it's expressed in a healthy way. So the second child, it's interesting when the second child starts to arrive in the world. They have a different experience altogether because they came into the world with parents and a sibling, and there's almost like a catching up game that occurs because they want to have that, they have that model as a sibling, so they want to, of course, strive to be more towards that. And I think that that's something that's very, very important to recognize. And they can actually be more adjusted, the second child, because of this. So what does that mean towards relationships with other siblings? If the competition is never resolved for the sake of higher values, like we said previously, in terms of prioritizing the familial relations and such, they can grow up into an adult that's more at risk for estrangement. And if there's a sufficient sense of differentiation from the first child and a willingness to make room for their personality, then there's less risk for estrangement. So a healthy expression from the second child's birth position would be to develop diplomacy skills given the presence of others and the need for more cooperation because of the fact that they are many. So that's the reality of the second child.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and it's important to recognize that siblings have such a profound stamp on each other. They really are the first playmate. And there's a lot of testing ground there to see what works socially amongst siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Adler aims this very well, and he very much shows us essentially the influences. And we also learned, I learned when I was doing this research, how there's certain misconceptions that can occur, particular to the middle child that we often hear about. And I'll get into that because I think it's very important. Now, a lot of us are familiar with middle child syndrome because they have to deal with change early on. They can sometimes be filled with resentment and frustration because they're in the middle and they no longer have the status of being the younger child when somebody else comes after. And that makes it they can compete with the poor attention with their siblings that came before and after them, of course. And bigger families can sometimes have less competition and more cooperation to get what they want because of the fact that it's more democratic in that way. So I think that because the parents' attention is divided all the more, it can be that they can develop in a healthy way the skills of negotiating what they want. So again, there's different ways of seeing this, and there's healthy and unhealthy expressions. As a middle child, I think the perception of unfairness can breed resentment, which can foster a sense of unevenness and potentially make the child overcompensate with a sense of rigidity as an adult. Perhaps in that sense that if they don't have to fight for that they have to fight for what they want and such, so sometimes that can create more of a sense of rigidity. And the upside with the middle child is that they can have a healthy expression of adaptability. When things go well, they learn to adapt in healthy ways with healthy coping mechanisms that they learned as a child, as a counterweight, to avoid any rigidity over time. So they can actually have more of an understanding of their siblings, provided that they develop those skills early on.
Well, I would like to interject here too that they have two possibilities for strong sibling relationships. So in my case, my sibling relationship was very intense because I only had one brother. And if I lost that relationship, I lost not only him, but I lost being an aunt and my children having cousins. And so the whole branch of the family was sawed off. If you have another sibling, at least you have the comfort of another branch of the family. And I think it's important to recognize that if there are 3 children in the family or more, there are going to be all kinds of relationships, but you don't have that same intensity that I certainly had with my brother. So when the estrangement occurred, it was particularly devastating.
And I would agree with you because, again, it can push those buttons of feeling unloved or left out, which is often the reality that the middle child will feel. And I just want to say this, and I think it's important to mention this because oftentimes people tend to think that the middle child's needs are less addressed. And according to a study published in 2007 on sibling relationships, it's true that there can be more competition for affection with their parents and that they have to work harder to get that affection. But in terms of closeness, either as kids or adults, it would seem that the middle child fares no differently. And some experts have actually theorized that it might be specific life phases that creates that sense of being left out or forgotten. And it can be, for example, with financial investment as a teenager, in particular in that life phase, the hand-me-downs and such, and not getting necessarily what you want, So,
yeah, feeling devalued because you don't get a new item.
yes. So there are particular phases in life where that's more prevalent, where that is true. But for the most part, if you look at it generally, it would seem that the middle child fares as well as the first and last born children too. I just want to say that.
Well, I think this is all fascinating, Ollie John. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a whole lot more time to explore it. So maybe we need to think about another episode on this topic.
Well, I think that that's right. Instead of rushing through this, I know that we still have the youngest child to go through, which is some of what we perceive of the young child is true, of course. The rules don't always necessarily apply in the same way. I do want to mention that, but I think that we can perhaps leave that for another time if we're already need to wind this episode down. But of course, we do invite our viewers to join us. So that way we can, of course, continue this conversation. And I would even invite our viewers to participate actively in our forums on my Facebook page, Sibling Estrangement, Sharing, Coping, Connecting. I think that can be something that we can talk about more so as we transition into a next episode that will include the youngest child next time around when we discuss that.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm particularly interested in what you have to say about the youngest child.
Yes. Yes.
Since I am the youngest child.
So we can certainly explore some of that next time when we see each other, of course. And there's other themes that we have that we'd like to delve deeper into, of course, Fern. And I look forward to doing this again with you. So
I do too, and I just want to say how delighted I am that we have been hearing from people who have this experience and feel that they want to respond to some of what we said here. It's very validating personally, but it's also very important in terms of the topic that's so avoided in our society and culture. So great to be with you, Ollie John, and I look forward to the next time.
Well, I look forward to seeing you again, Fern. Thank you for being here. This is a great conversation we're having, and I'm glad that both of us are part of it, and we'll continue this next time.
Great.
Thanks again.
Now.
Bye.